Before and during the arrival, bring your copy of the Invigilator handbook and kind of familiarize yourself with the terms, the exam rules, and the exam scripts that are in the handbook. Meet at the lounge directly facing the parking lot off Antonio Parkway. The lounge is attached to the major hall at San Francisco Solano, and it's our staging room. So I'll be there, as well as sometimes Mr. Rummel might be there, and we'll have all the materials for the exam rooms. And the materials that you'll take to the room and set up or distribute as needed include the blue answer cover sheets to be placed at the seating area, answer booklets, other booklets if needed. Some of the exams have formula booklets, data booklets, etc. And the exam itself, exam papers that are in sealed blue envelopes. And this seal will not be broken until the place in the Invigilator script that calls for the seal to be broken. You'll have course roster and a seating map for the check-in of students to facilitate that process. Several blank incident reports. You can read more about the incident reports in the Invigilator handbook. And then pens, pencils, etc. And then you can gather the students and make announcements for the candidates to use the restroom. Once they check in with their photo ID, they're not supposed to leave to use the restroom for at least an hour. Otherwise, you have to recheck their photo ID and go through the process all over again. Some of the exam terms that you will need to understand the Invigilator handbook, and maybe even some of the slides attached, include exam paper, what we normally might call an exam booklet. In the IB world, and apparently in the UK, is called an exam paper. And basically it's a booklet with multiple pages that have all the questions for the exam. The answer booklet is a 4-page lined paper booklet in pink and white with a hole in the upper left-hand corner. Then there's an answer cover sheet, which is a blue cover sheet with pre-printed candidate name, session number, exam name, QR code. And that information is used by the scanning center to make sure that all of the accompanying materials all belong to the same candidate, and there is a hole in the upper left-hand corner. Then there are MCQ answer sheets, which are the multiple choice sheets that come with pre-printed candidate name, etc. It's the only exam on which a pencil may be used, and there is no exam cover sheet, no answer cover sheet used with the MCQ answer sheet because it has all the information. Then in some cases there may be graph paper. It's used for graphs or scratch notes, usually math or econ, I believe, and pencils can be used for graphs. And again, graph paper has a hole in the upper left-hand corner. The types of exam papers are a structured exam paper where students will write answers to the questions directly in the exam paper, so in the booklet, and there is a hole in the upper left-hand corner. Then there is a semi-structured exam paper, which is where students will write the answers in one section of the exam, usually section A, directly on the exam paper in the booklet. And then the other section B will be answered in answer booklets. And there is a hole in the upper left-hand corner of a semi-structured exam paper. Finally, there is an unstructured exam paper. And because it's unstructured and will not be sent to the scanning center, students may make outlines, working notes, bullet points, diagrams. They can highlight info on the exam paper, but all of their answers will be written in answer booklets, the 4-page line booklet. And in many cases, students might need to use more than one of the 4-page answer booklets, and there is no hole in the upper left-hand corner of the unstructured exam paper. Now, before the exam, before letting students enter, we need to put up the sign that says IB test in progress in several places outside the exam room and on exam room door. If it's a small room, we just need to put maybe one up front in the exam room and one on the door. If it's a large room like the hall or when we have 3 rooms together, then you're probably going to use several inside the exam room as well as the one on the door. And then we will be using a clock display that's got a software timer that will show and then count down on the display the time for the exam, and that's projected on the TV. There's a laptop with it. So, point that out to the students, and usually either Mr. Rummel or I will show you how to use that timer in case it goes to sleep or something happens during the exam and we have to begin the timer again. Make sure that the answer cover sheets and the booklets, as prescribed, are at the appropriate seat. Using the seating map in your materials, there is a chart in the Invigilator handbook that shows what exams need what booklets at the table that accompany the answer cover sheets. And then set out a basket of pens, pencils, highlighters. You can put these up front. Students were asked to bring their own, but some won't have them. So keep the baskets at your table up front and let students use as they need. Ask teachers to check and clear calculators if they are not already doing so. Some of the teachers will have cleared some of the student calculators before that morning, and then we'll just check them to be sure they're in exam mode. If they're not in exam mode, you don't need to worry about putting them in exam mode. The content teacher, the classroom teacher, will be there to clear those calculators and place them in exam mode. And then for greeting and admitting the students, I suggest if it's a smaller exam, you're only going to have 2 invigilators. Therefore, you'd have 1 invigilator at the door checking IDs and letting students in, and one of you would be inside making sure everything is set up and then helping students find their seating, etc. If it's a larger exam where you have 4 invigilators or more, then you might have 2 invigilators, or even for the large exams, you might have 3 or 4 invigilators at the door checking multiple students in while everybody else is helping students find their seats and making sure everything is set up. For students to check in, they must have a photo ID. It could be a school ID, it can be a driver's license. So you must check the identity of each candidate on the photo ID, then you find them on the exam roster and just check them off. Each invigilator who is doing the check-in will have their own copy of the exam roster. And don't worry about reconciling the rosters together. We will do that in the staging room after the exam begins. Remind candidates they're not allowed to have any food or any electronic or communication devices or even scratch paper. And electronic devices include watches and cell phones, all watches, not just smart watches. So if they brought those with them, they need to place them in backpacks or another bag in the back of the room. And they need to be sure to turn off their phones and other electronic media devices to avoid unnecessary disruptions. Remind students to enter in a quiet and orderly fashion, finding their assigned seating by looking at the answer cover sheet. They must sit at the designated seat. In large exams, invigilators should roam, helping them find their seat, using the seating map and then checking that they match the information on the answer cover sheet, because they cannot sit anywhere except at their designated seat. After the ID check and backpacks have been put away, the teacher, will check the calculator, will make sure it's in exam mode. No one may take a calculator to their place if not in exam mode and if the teacher has not checked it in. Remind students that once they are in the room, they're subject to the IB conduct of the exam. which includes all the rules about being quiet, no disruptions, being respectful, and no cheating. Now we can start the exam. You can inform the candidates, once everyone is seated, that the test is now beginning, and they must remain silent until the exam time is complete and they are dismissed. Myself or Mr. Rummel will introduce the exam, explain if there's any exam errata. Last year, I think we had errata on 2 of the exams, that was all. And then we'll turn it over to the invigilators. One invigilator amongst those of you who are there should read the script instructions for the appropriate exam. You can ask all candidates to check the answer cover sheet at their desk and ensure the information is correct. Remind candidates that no scratch paper is allowed. This is all in the script, by the way, and then when you're reading the script, at the indicated point, have the other invigilators open the sealed blue packets with the exam papers so that all candidates may see they're being opened from a sealed state. And then you can distribute then the exam papers, and the person reading the script should wait until that distribution has finished in large groups. Maybe every invigilator except the person reading the script might want to help with distributing the exam papers to make it more efficient. And then call candidates' attention to the time display on the timer so they know where to look to see how much time is left. Remind them to write legibly. Students will not be penalized for poor handwriting or poor grammar or poor spelling. But if an examiner cannot read the exam, then it can't really be evaluated and marked, so it's to their disadvantage. Reading time and the instruction script. One of the invigilators will read the instruction script specific to the exam, pausing at the indicated places for candidates to respond. Now this script varies slightly by exam paper, and each type was included in your Invigilator handbook, so you could already familiarize yourself with the flow of the script and the words that will be said. So there is a script for structured exams, a script for semi-structured exams, a script for unstructured exams, a script for MCQ, multiple choice exams, and a script for the listening exam, which only pertains to world languages. Candidates for every IB exam are allowed 5 minutes of reading time for reading the instructions before they begin the exam. There's no writing during reading time, but as they're reading, they should be starting to formulate their thoughts about how they might approach some of those questions. And you can allow candidates to write errata in exam paper if the errata is posted. The reading time does not happen in multiple choice question exams because those are pretty straightforward. You open up the booklet and you begin bubbling in your answers. The beginning test time does not begin until reading time is over, so you would not press the space bar to begin test time on the timer until reading time is over. During the exam, monitor, walk the room. One invigilator should be at the back of the room. The others can walk around. Students may ask questions by raising their hand, and you may point them to reading the instructions more carefully, but don't provide advice or explanation. Avoid the temptation. And advise them to answer to the best of their ability. After 1 hour of the exam, students may ask for a bathroom break. Again, they must raise their hand, and they may not go to the bathroom unsupervised, so one invigilator must accompany and supervise the student, and because of that, they need to go one at a time. The incident report is to report any irregularities or things of interest, items of interest that IB may judge to be violations of the conduct of exam rules. And these include talking or signaling with the face or hand movements. When you report that, you need to describe the event, what you saw. If you see phones or other electronic devices in evidence when they're supposed to be in the backpacks, again, you'll need to describe the event. In the past, IB has always come back with by revoking the marks on the exam. If a student had a phone at their place or any electronic device, they've revoked the marks, and they've also marked the IB transcript as a violation of academic integrity. So it's really not something a student wants to have in their possession. And then if there's either explicit or suspected cheating, if you see somebody like using notes or talking, using electronic devices, looking at someone else's paper or someone's answer sheet, again, record and describe the event. We used to just kick kids out of the exam for those, but now we're supposed to record the event and report it so that we don't disrupt anybody during the exam with the student that we suspect of cheating, protesting, etc. Feel free to talk to those students after the exam is over and warn them that you're reporting the event. Late arrival and the reason for late arrival. Students may sometimes be running late. They might have an accident. Last year we had to call some students at home who were sleeping because it was after prom. So there may be reasons for their late arrivals. Students are allowed to begin the exams late, and whether or not we allow them the full time to complete the exam really depends on how late they arrive and the reason for the late arrival. If the student's not clear on a question or thinks the question is an error, and they raise their hand to tell you about it, then report the question number and the nature of why it's unclear or thought to be an error on the incident report, because if IB gets enough of those reports from all of the testing around the world, then in all likelihood, if it appears that an exam question was wrong, then they will throw out the results of that exam question if there was an error in the writing of the question itself. If the student becomes ill during an exam, then you need to record the nature of the illness and whether the student took a short break, supervised. Always, they must be supervised if they take a break and returned, or whether the student just left the exam for the day. And then if the student has a bathroom break, again, it's supervised and it's recorded. If a student finishes an exam early, they have to sit and wait for everyone else to be finished. Even if everyone finished early, this year IB does not allow the session to end early. So we have to let the timer run its course in terms of the total exam time, and no one may leave until that timer is done. Now, if everyone has finished their exam, then you could already, even though the timer's not done, you could already begin the process of telling them what to do in terms of hooking their exams together, but no one can leave the room until the timer is done and you have dismissed them. Ending the exam. So you'll announce the end of the exam when the timer shows that time is up. You'll also announce when there's 30 minutes left in the exam and when there's 5 minutes left in the exam. Ensure that no candidate continues writing when that timer says time is up. Instruct students to prepare their materials. So they will organize their materials. The blue answer cover sheet goes on top. Then the structured and semi-structured exam papers go behind the answer cover sheet. Then any answer booklets or graph paper that they used, including answer booklets or graph paper that they used just for scratch work or planning work, that all gets sent with the answer cover sheet to the scanning center. And there's a little green tie that gets put through that left-hand corner in the hole that was provided on all those different documents. So they all are hooked together with this small green tie. Once it's hooked together, it is called a script. Instruct students to place the script, any unused answer booklets or data booklets, and the unstructured exam paper on the table in front of them, if an unstructured exam paper was used. Then, as invigilators, walk around the room and collect all the hooked exam materials, so all the scripts, any unused booklet, and any unstructured exam papers if it was an unstructured session. After the exams are all collected, the materials are all collected, please read the ending instructions that remind students they may not speak to anyone about the exam or its content for 24 hours. And students have been denied their marks and even been denied their diplomas if IB finds them in social media or on the internet talking to people about the exam during that 24-hour window. So then you can congratulate them, remind them that there's snacks in the back of the room, and dismiss them. After the exam, invigilators will help to organize the scripts. So you'll organize the scripts or the MCQ answer sheets. You arrange the scripts or the MCQ answer sheets in numerical session number order, including answer sheets from many absent candidates. If a candidate is absent, did not show up for the exam, there's an X and a candidate absent box on the cover sheet or the MCQ answer sheet. And we put the X in that absent box, and it goes in the stack of scripts and in the stack of MCQ answer sheets according to its numerical session number. Then the MCQ answer sheets go in the yellow plastic envelope labeled for the subject and paper, and write the number of MCQ answer sheets that are enclosed in the envelope in a white square that appears on the envelope. Place the scripts organized by session number in the blue plastic envelope, and as many as will fit into the blue envelope, but no less than 20, unless there's less than 20 candidates. They're labeled for subject and paper, and you write the number of scripts you've enclosed in the blue envelope, again on the white square. And then you'll give those envelopes to either myself or Mr. Remmel in the lounge, our staging area. We will supervise those envelopes, and they will be under our jurisdiction, if you will, until they're returned to the storage closet, after which they will be prepared for shipping. Just a reminder on breaks and late arrivals, bathroom breaks are allowed for exams longer than an hour and 15 minutes, but only after 1 hour has passed. Students must be supervised. They may not go alone, and only one student is allowed to go at a time. If one of the invigilators or proctors is not available, then please text me or Mr. Remmel, and we'll accompany the student to the restroom. My phone number is here on the slide. On the incident report sheet available on the clipboard, you write down the student name and session number, the time student left for the restroom, and the return time. In some cases, there may be an exam paper 2 and an exam paper 3, or an exam paper 1 and an exam paper 3 in the same session. So in those cases, you might want to provide supervised breaks of 15 minutes between the papers, between the different exam papers, and students can't leave the exam room during that supervised break. They must stay in the exam room. They have to remain reasonably quiet, or at least certainly orderly, not running around, but they can chat, stretch, take a brain break, whatever helps them kind of reset and refocus before they begin the second paper of the exam. Late arrivals, candidates can be allowed into the examination room during the first 60 minutes of an examination, and they may finish as much of the exam as they're able to within the allotted examination time. If it was an emergency that resulted in them being late or being later than 60 minutes, then go ahead and, text me or call me over. They can explain to me why they're late, and then I'll decide whether to admit them and whether they get full time to complete their exam or not. On the incident report sheet, we need also to report those late arrivals and the description of the circumstances as to why they are late. So I think that pretty much covers everything that will happen on the day of the exam, and all of the information is also available in print on the Invigilator handbook that was emailed to all of you. Thank you again so much for invigilating. We had 159 slots that we needed to cover, and we only had a few slots that I've been begging around school to get those covered. So thank you again. We really cannot do these exams without you. Thank you.